Fantastic. Okay, so as Tina said, I'm founder and managing partner of Indelible Ventures. I'm American, based in Malaysia. We invest across Southeast Asia, just so that you know. Our priority markets are Philippines, Thailand, and Malaysia in regards to Southeast Asia. We solely invest in B2B tech, and we're generally first check writers. By first check writers, our kind of sweet spot is post-product, but you don't have to have a whole lot of revenue. Generally, between the time that we meet you when you just launch your product and by the time it closed, you'll probably have some sort of customers on board, just because there's a little bit of passage of time there. But we generally come in quite early. We like to get involved with companies. I believe that there's an important value add role on behalf of investors. Although a lot of investors say that, and then a lot of them don't actually deliver on it. So I do need to caveat that. So don't take my word for it. Check out our portfolio and actually talk to them if you want to actually reference check me, which is perfectly fine to do, by the way. You should always reference check the investors that you talk to. So again, in regards to the topic of today, we're going to be talking about product market fit. I think product market fit is a topic that is going to apply across the spectrum, whether or not you're SME, service-based business, or startup. And as Tina was saying, the word startup kind of got co-opted by the tech industry to where like a startup business that is not tech generally doesn't use the word startup anymore. It's entrepreneurship, but we've kind of like appropriated the word and made it our own within the tech industry. So oftentimes when you hear somebody talk about startup, it's referring to technology-based business. That has tended to be a little bit fuzzy, to be honest with you, because I've started seeing some like cafe chains getting VC funding and calling themselves tech enabled in order to like apply the word startup. So there's a lot of fuzziness to some of the definitions that go on in the industry. But that's the general premise. So okay, so I'm gonna jump into a presentation and share my screen here, and then we can get going with the topic of the day, which is going to be product market fit. And hopefully you should all be seeing my screen right now.
Yes.
So cool. Jumping straight away into it. What is product market fit? If you're in the space, you've probably heard the terminology product market fit. If you've had conversations with investors in the past, you've probably heard them ask you, how do you know if you have product market fit? You may or may not have heard this terminology around, but there's a little bit of a problem with this phrase, because like, what does it actually mean? And the reality is like, this term doesn't actually have a consensus opinion in regards to what it means. It's another one of these sort of like fuzzy terms that is different depending upon who you are, what you do, etc. So there's not really a one size fits all definition to it. There are a few quotes that I'll throw out there in regards to what other people have said about it. So Mark Andreessen, if you're familiar with Andreessen Horowitz, one of the old school venture capitalists, I'm assuming that I might be the only one old enough to remember Netscape on this call, but that was what he founded way back in the early days of the internet. But anyways, one of the original people out there. This quote saying, "Being in a good market with a product that can satisfy that market." All right, well, logically that phrasing makes sense, but what the heck does that mean? Like how do I know if I have it? Like what can I actually measure and say, yeah, proof B, I'm in a good market with a product that satisfies it. So it's a little bit fuzzy. Sean Ellis, another person in the space, a famous commentator, which I can talk about one of the tests that he talks about later. Quote from him: "You've achieved product market fit when you can repeatedly acquire customers who will be very disappointed if your product or service went away." So there starts developing a little bit more of a sentiment component into it. You can get customers repeatedly, but they would also be disappointed if they no longer have access to it. It's implying that there's a sentiment of disappointment if they can no longer use it. You've created so much value to them that if you took it away, it would cause disruption for them. Lastly, Paul Graham, who's another luminary of the Silicon Valley ecosystem. When you get product market fit, it feels like you've created something that people are trying to pull out of your hands. So this one starts getting into a little bit of the demand pull. You've created something that's so enticing that that the demand is outstripping, is moving so fast that it feels like they're just ripping it out of your hands. There's a sort of feel component. And so with the Andreessen quote, it seems like there's more of a revenue-based component that you're satisfying the market. With the Sean Ellis, there's a sentiment on behalf of the buyer. With Paul Graham, there's this sort of feel component in regards to the founder of it's moving so fast that it just seems like it's moving so fast that it just seems like it's hard to keep up with. But that's all well and good, but it's again, we're in this sort of fuzziness in regards to what does this mean to my business now, and how can I tell whether or not I'm on the right track? Because when you're early, you don't have a long enough track record in order to be able to say, yeah, this person's been using my product for 2 years, and if I go ask them if they'd be upset if they didn't have it, well, I haven't been around for 2 years. I just launched 2 months ago, or I just launched 6 months ago. I need something that's a little bit more tangible. So there's a lot of fuzziness and challenge with these definitions. And so when we start getting into it, there's a bit of what I want to call like the signal versus noise problem when we start thinking about the definitions around product market fit. So signal, because as we talked about with the disappointed if you took it away, it feels like they're ripping it out of our hands. It's moving fast. There's demand that's repeatable. So the signal in my mind is usage. Are people using it? Do you have this sort of quote unquote power users of whatever your product or service is? Like this is still applicable if it's not a tech startup. If it's a bakery and you have the same person showing up every morning to buy the fresh baked goods, they must really like it. That's usage. If they are coming with that consistency, that's now habit. Habit formation ends up becoming another thing that's different to break. Outcome, obviously if they're buying my baked goods, they're probably eating it as well. But with other sort of services, there's outcomes that you can actually end up measure. The noise side of things, on the other hand, is a bit different. On the noise side of things, just because you get revenue doesn't necessarily mean that there's product market fit, because revenue without retention just probably means that you could be a very good salesperson. So you can go out and sell somebody, and I'll use the example of subscription products. And the notorious one, like, is a non-tech startup one. So I'll use non-tech startup because I'm not sure the audience here. So like, I think some of these will be like familiar across the board. But the notorious one on revenue without retention is your gym memberships, because every year, come January, New Year's resolution, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to get back on track. My life is going to be fantastic. But come, in a bad scenario, maybe come mid-January or February, or more likely somewhere a few months down the road, you just stop and then you don't end up refreshing and renewing. So it's a sign that you can sell, but when you don't have retention, you're basically sitting on a hamster wheel, constantly having to run because you're having to replace all of those customers every single time. It's a signal that you can sell, but it's not necessarily a signal that there's product market fit, because that same customer is not deriving such value out of it that they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. So oftentimes the challenge in early stage startups is you start getting a little bit of traction by getting some revenue on board. But the question that is difficult to answer is whether or not that is truly signal or whether it's actually just noise. And that kind of comes into to the left side of this chart, which is the usage, the habit, the outcome. What are the underlying beneath that revenue that you achieved of whether or not it's actually providing clearer signal? Because again, revenue without retention is churn, and it's in one day, out the next. We want things that show greater signal that it's going to stick. And that applies to a lot of vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are these ones that don't really mean anything, but people love talking about them. So like in the early days, people would spend like crazy amounts of money on ads just to push traffic to their website. And then they'd go around saying, we've got X number of visibility, or like you even have social media accounts where they would spend a bunch of money to just like buy fake followers. And then they would kind of like throw this up and they're like, look how many people are following us. Look how many people are looking at us. But then when you go below the line, there's actually nothing. You have no conversion, you have no revenue, you have no usage, you have no anything coming out of it. And so like there's a big difference between what actually means something in regards to the signal and what is just noise and vanity metrics that are being captured. So I want to be very clear on that. We can kind of touch on that a little bit maybe when in the Q&A section. But I'm going to jump ahead to the next part, which is, in my belief, when you're talking about product market fit, you have to start with your ICP, your ideal customer persona, because the product market fit is very contextual. As I said, it's a very sort of fuzzy term because it's not a one size fits all. I can't tell 10 different companies the same definition, which is one of the problems with the phrasing of product market fit. But the reason why it's contextual is every market is different. Every niche within a market can end up being different. And so it needs to actually, the definition needs to fit with that market. And in order to understand that, we need to first start by defining who is our market. Who are we ideally going after so that we can not only as builders building the right thing, but so that we can actually figure out the proper signal metrics that we can measure what is actually product market fit in a meaningful way. And with that, we can be more confident in regards to applying it towards scaling up our business. Now, ignore the like details under the graphic, because that's me giving a prompt to AI and not actually spending a lot of time in regards to like, let me make sure that this is a true like persona. This is me being not a good slide designer and taking a shortcut in putting it together. But it fits with the intention. Like ignore the details. But the point is like we need to understand who is our customer. And I think especially if you're just getting started, the advice that I give every single startup is deep and narrow. Because if you're trying to have too broad of a market, you're going to have too much noise in the signals of market fit. If you're narrow, again, coming back to this product market fit is contextual. If you're narrow, you're in a more defined market, and that ends up giving you a much clearer signal. And it's not mixing and matching, because you may end up having conflicting evidence, because one part of, if you're too broad, One side of the spectrum may end up viewing things one way. One side of the spectrum may end up viewing things one way. You want to sell a SaaS product to both micro enterprises and giant enterprises. You're going to have completely different use cases, completely different behavior, completely different everything. And so, that's kind of an extreme example, but nonetheless, the key point here is you want to be able to have the definition clear, so that you can make sure that you're able to separate the signal versus noise. So, what is the goal of product market fit? The intention out of it, and the reason why we even use the term, is that you're trying to clarify and you're trying to show that there truly is a market demand, and that the product that you are creating, as the Marc Andreessen quote said before, that the product that you're making actually matches that demand. There is a market demand there. You're also trying to show that customers are realizing the value of it. This is coming back to revenue without retention is just noise. If customers are realizing value, that is a key ingredient towards retention. And that is my last point there. Usage should lead to retention. If I'm using it and deriving value out of it, I should be willing to keep on coming back and paying for it, right? And so there's other examples out there. I threw in this example at the bottom, and this is something that's actually the super early days of Facebook when they were actually launching. Like I said, I'm probably quite a bit older than everyone in this room. But in the very beginning, when they were trying to figure out how do we actually scale, they came up with this, and they were a little bit further along. So they had some data to support this. But what they found is that if you added 7 friends within 10 days, you would remain an active user of the platform. And what this showed was that the usage of adding 7 friends gave them the realization of the value, and they were able to time frame that if it happened within the short, less than 2 weeks time period, you realize the value so fast that you remain active and that activity sticks. Now, this is going back. I'm not sure whether or not these definitions have changed over time, but that was one of the things that they came up with in the early days. So now I'm going to talk about a couple of common metrics for product market fit. And as you can probably guess by the graphic that I threw up there, I'm not super wowed by the use of these, but these are the ones that you should probably know, simply because these are the ones that a lot of people are going to talk about. But like, this graphic kind of symbolizes my sentiment about a lot of these. I'm not so enthused in regards to these. But one of the metrics on product market fit is revenue growth. A lot of people will take this blanket look at it and say, if your demand is growing and you can demonstrate that you're selling more, that's a signal of product market fit. And while it's not wrong per se, it's too surface level. We're not getting like the details below that truly show whether or not that's true or false. Because again, it could be a false signal. It could be just noise of getting that revenue. Because like, I've seen tons of companies that, that where you just have like an incredible salesperson on the team, and like, there's these sayings of like a person that could sell ice in a blizzard. These sort of sayings like that. If you have one of those salespeople, then like, of course, you're going to end up seeing revenue hit, but is it going to come back? And that's the key thing. So revenue growth is a signal, but it's not the best signal in my mind. You should see increasing demand, of course. But that's a different thing. Retention curves flattening. Retention curves flattening, I actually do like, because this is a signal of our people coming back for more. And so this has a tendency of varying. There's not a one size fits all. Each product has a little bit of a different sort of analysis here. But basically what retention curves flattening means is, if you think about it, in the beginning, like, let's say you do, let's say you signed up everybody. I imagine that a lot of the people that are in the tech space are probably did a monthly subscription to some sort of vibe coding platform these days. Yeah. I'm just going to make the assumption, like, there's a lot of people that probably ended up getting a Lovable or a Plead or like some sort of subscription and is paying like their $20, $30 a month here. Right. Well, 1 month after it, probably not everyone is still using it. So now you've got the retention curve sloping down. It starts out high. The second month, a few more people drop off. They're like, no, I'm going to switch off to something else. And a couple of months more go by, a few more people dropped off. But ultimately, let's say after 6 months, the people that dropped off have already dropped off, and the curve starts flattening to where people are really kind of sticking now. That's what we mean by the retention curve flattens. Like, you have a high churn to begin with, and then over time it starts flattening, and then it just kind of is like that flat line. I won't get into smiles or some other of the shapes of the retention curves, but this is a signal that you have it, because not everybody's going to stick with your product. Churn is natural, doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone's cup of soup. But that return curve flattening is an important thing. So with whatever business that you're in, if you're not already trying to figure out your churn and retention, I would highly suggest doing it. This is one of the areas that I oftentimes will work on with startups, is we'll do cohort retention. So we'll do a few different ways of segmenting it as well, because we can sometimes drill down and get some valuable insights on the behavior, how they're using it. It can give a lot of good product insights on how it's really fitting in there. So this is actually one that doesn't make me make that face, but there needs to be more context to it. Net Promoter Score. Have you ever had one of those surveys where it's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy were you? Do you think this? Now fill in this one. What could we do better? All of this. Everybody's done surveys. And if you're doing any sort of like program, product, service, etc., you really need to do these surveys. So I'm not knocking the surveys, but have you ever read like reviews online? Like, the thing that motivates people oftentimes to like fill out some of these are not always indicative of every person that's out there. So sometimes if your response rate on NPS is not above a certain level, then the meaningfulness of that NPS doesn't really tell me anything. Like, there's some messiness in this information. So it's not a be all end all metric, but a lot of people will talk about it because it's an indication of the sentiment aspect of the customers, which leads into this Sean Ellis test, which is relatively similar. His test is basically asking in those surveys, would you be disappointed if this product was no longer available? How would you feel if I took it away? And his view was, if you get more than 40% saying that they will be disappointed, then you've got product market fit. Now, that's not bad. It's talking about the sentiment aspect, but there's oftentimes a disconnect when you're talking about these sort of things between people don't always know what they want and people don't always say what they'll actually do. So if you ask somebody whether or not they'll be very disappointed, sure. But then again, maybe next week they end up buying another product because they're trying to cut cost or some other thing. So there's value in this measurement, but again, it's not a end all be all metric. I'm just kind of listing out the ones that are commonly used. Organic user growth. Quite similar. I think a lot of times with this, it can kind of have a tendency of falling into vanity metrics, especially if you have free trials in your product, because you end up getting this sort of like massive sort of free trial. We've got huge organic user growth, but then your converted to paid is like so tiny, and then it doesn't really signal anything. It just signals that people like free stuff, and so that's not going to really surprise anyone. So again, they're useful measurements, but again, because as I referenced on the slide before, PMF is very contextual. All of these individual data points as standalones don't really give you the full picture. And so we're trying to round things out. Now, I take a slightly different view on product market fit. So the way that I think about it is trying to attack into outcome orientation and action behavior orientation. And the way that I try and think about it is creating a definition around, sorry, I was supposed to, this is how I think about it. If my ideal customer persona performs X action to achieve Y result within T time frame, that to me is the indication that I have delivered value and that the customer has achieved that value. That is, to me, a leading indicator, meaning it's a predictive of the future of whether or not I should be able to retain that customer. Churn will always happen. What I'm trying to do is prediction of the future, because when I think about product market fit, it's the biggest problematic component of it is in that early days. And I need to try and make a prediction of whether or not I'm showing indications of it. So for me, I'm trying to blend the action orientation of what is their behavior, what is their interaction with my product or service, and what are they actually getting out of it. And then I need to time frame it, because a lot of this ends up becoming on the time frame ends up oftentimes giving an indication of the ease of use, and the ease of use also ends up becoming a factor into that retention component of it. So this is always a good exercise in my mind to think about your business and start thinking about it. Again, there's not a universal consensus on product market fit. My intention here is to kind of give you the scope of the way that different folks think about it. I like thinking about it this way because of the predictive nature that this can provide and how this can become actionable for you when you're thinking about product development, when you're thinking about your messaging, when you're thinking about trying to figure out why is this customer proceeding in this order of operations, whereas this customer is proceeding in this order of operations. It gives a little bit of clarity. We need to create a hypothesis around action, result, in what time frame. So caution signs that you don't have product market fit. Again, if customers are churning quickly, that's coming back to the point that I've kind of hammered away at. Revenue without retention is just noise. If customers are churning quickly and in large numbers, that can be a worrying thing. They're not getting value. Customers churning quickly can be a sign of needing to resolve some of the product as well. Because we do have a factor. The reason why I put on my prior slide, putting time as a factor in it, we do have an aspect of time to value. That's a fuzzy term as well. But you define what the value that the customer receives is, and then you try and figure out what's the time from start to the realization of that value. And you want to make sure that that's as short as feasibly or relevantly possible with your product or service, because that can be a contributing factor to why customers churn quickly. And that can be a product market fit issue. Beyond just the fact of whether or not the product is bad, the product could be fantastic, but if it takes too long, If you're trying to order a taxi on Grab and it tells you that it's going to be 45 minutes, you might think about trying to find another pathway in order to get to your destination. I'm sure everyone's used to bad traffic, but 45 minutes is just too long of a wait. I'm going to try and figure out some other way to get where I'm going. Same thing. The product is fine. It just took too long for me to get to the point of value. On the behavioral side, low engagement or usage. Again, as I said, action leading to a result within a time frame. If people are not using it in a way that makes sense for the way that you believe that the value provision is, misuse, low use, these are factors that can be indicators that you don't actually have product market fit. If you're just looking at like a vanity metric in regards to number of users or the amount of revenue that you have, it may be hiding the aspect that they're just not really engaging with it. I have a few subscriptions that I should probably cancel that are like $5 a month. I'm not engaging with it. The moment that the moment that I remember that I have it, I usually cancel it. But part of the benefit of these sort of recurring payments is sometimes I just forget. And so there are a lot of instances of that. But the moment that I remember and I realize, oh, well, I don't engage with this, I don't bother with it, I'm cutting it. And so that can end up being a sign that churn will happen and that you'll end up that you could end up losing. I see Tina's got her hand up, so maybe I should pause and let her jump in if she's got something to chime in with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm just doing a time check. Yes, because we have 2 startups that are going to pitch. So I'll leave it up to you. Probably
Let me zoom forward on this. I have a tendency of rambling away when I get excited about a topic. Okay, so other ones that are indicators on it is if you have to discount the heck out of your product just to get somebody to buy it, it's probably not a good sign. It could be some markets have been conditioned that way. If you're selling cars, everybody expects that you're going to end up giving a discount. It's just the nature of that market. We've been conditioned as buyers that the sticker price is not what you pay. You're supposed to go in and negotiate a lower price. But that's not every sort of industry. So like some industries are conditioned that way, but some industries are not. Feedback, again, if it's indifferent or negative. Why product market fit matters. It's the foundation for scaling. Like if you don't know that you are servicing your customers well and that they're deriving value and that you don't have that indication and you start trying to put money into the growth engines to start scaling up your customer base, you're just going to end up burning and wasting a bunch of money. You need to figure out that product market fit first so that then you can start pumping the engines to figure out to start fine-tuning the go-to-market strategy and start scaling up. And then you start moving on to the next problem. But without product market fit, you could just end up burning. And that's not a great strategy. Okay, so I couldn't help but throw this graphic because product market fit is a moving target. And it's, if anybody's spent time in like an old school arcade, again, not to date myself, but it kind of feels like whack-a-mole because when I talked about product market fit being contextual, if you start targeting a new customer segment, a new customer geography, a new product feature, all of these end up changing where that little thing is going to start popping up at. So you got to be understanding that product market fit is a moving target. Customer behaviors change. So the product market fit can change simply from the nature of the change in behaviors of customers. Other technology products that enter the market can change their sentiment on whether or not product market fit is still valid. So it's a constantly moving target that you regularly need to stay on top of and be thoughtful about. So in order to iterate on this, you need to develop feedback loops. You need to be actually measuring. You need to be looking at the usage data. You need to be talking to your users, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's through surveys. whatever the way, in order to kind of collect that data, you need to start thinking about those iterative feedback loops to get that information so that you can start iterating, ship small experiments so that you can test. If you think that you're onto something in regards to changes that are needed, break it down into small measurable components so that you can iterate in small increments. Because if you're trying to do too many experiments at once, the data is going to be overlapping and you're not going to know which one is the contributing factor. And focus on clear use cases. So I'll wrap up with a couple of key takeaways. Product market fit is solving a real valuable problem. There's many ways to think about it. So there's not one single definition. We talk about how it feels, the usage, the sentiment. And lastly, just don't scale before you find it. You can burn a bunch of money. I know you might end up getting very eager to get some revenue in. You can scale responsibly while you're testing your product market fit. And when you found it, I oftentimes talk about, and this may be a very well suited analogy considering it's Geeks on a beach. I usually use the visual of concentric circles. You start with a small dot and you draw concentric circles. And as it goes out, it starts looking like a seashell. You can imagine kind of the ever-expanding circle outside of a circle outside of a circle that ends up looking like a seashell. So don't scale before you find it and do that iterative process. And with that, I'll wrap it up. We can do questions. We can move into the pitches. Either way.
Okay. Since we're kind of short on time, I would ask people if you had any questions. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was wonderful. At every point you made, I was thinking about Geeks on the Beach and if I had product market fit. So I need a separate session for you on that. But if you have any questions for Kevin, please go ahead and put it in the chat and we will try to respond to you at the end of the pitching session. I want to be respectful of time. We have 16 minutes left and we have 2 startups pitching. So again, if you have any questions for Kevin, please put it in the chat and we'll make sure we respond to you either after the pitches or later on via email. And for the 2 startups, Kevin, I wanted to recommend that the startups pitch right next, one after the other, and then we do the Q&A after. In that way, a lot of the people that have to drop off at the hour can see the 2 pitches. Would that work?
Works for me.
Wonderful. Miles, I made you co-host so you can go ahead and share. And Jesse, that's you, right? Jesse is your name. I'm going to make you co-host so you can share your screen. So, Miles,
right.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Thanks, Tina. Thank you, Kevin, by the way, for that presentation. It's very insightful. So let me start off by sharing my screen. I hope you guys can see it now.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right. So my name is Richard Miles Notario. I'm from Seller PH. I'm the founder and product lead for this startup. I'll go ahead with the problem that we're trying to solve. So for Filipinos, there are a lot of micro and home-based sellers operating through chat, Messenger, Viber, or TikTok and rely on manual tracking. No storefronts, no systems, or stability. Platforms like Shopify and others are either too complex or too early stage for them. And then marketplaces like Shopee or Lazada remove brand control. So these sellers need something simpler, built for where they are at the moment of their entrepreneurship journey. So as a sample is that this confused persona wherein she's trying to find where the payments are, how many orders, what are the variants of the orders are. So we are trying to solve this by providing this platform called Seller PH, which is a mobile-first storefront builder that helps home-based entrepreneurs and small sellers launch and manage their online stores without apps, codings, or commissions. So that's one key here. We're not taking away any of the sales from this platform. So all of the sales go directly to this small businesses because we want to enable them to make their capitals roll over. And then we're trying to make it more idiot proof so everyone can launch their storefronts in minutes. So we're already able to accept orders, get paid via GCash using their QR codes. and then coordinate the deliveries via different couriers, and then tracking and fulfilling of the orders via with receipts and proof of payment uploads. So sorry, moving on. As product snapshot, or what we currently have developed, me being a solo founder, developer, and doing everything in between, I've already completed the MVP with checkout and pre-order support, buyer proof of payment uploads, POS style receipts and order summaries, and then Lalamove integration for self-book delivery, and then different variances for uh, uh, combinations of types of products. And then we're making sure that we're mobile friendly. So since in the Philippine landscape, everybody's using their mobile. For the current traction that we have, MVP has been completed, deployed, and we're currently in validation phase. We've already onboarded some early adapters and have seen them accepting orders already. So there are also 3 additional stores to onboard with us. And then just recently invited for other developers via equity shares to help me in developing this, so that I could focus on the business development end of the platform. So right now we're receiving feedback and validating the user flows, or what we could be improving on within our platform. So that's where we're currently at right now. Our roadmap is to provide further order insights and sales analytics, notifications via SMS. We already have email notifications, and then push on the paid plans. Currently, we're offering freemium for our early adapters, and then eventually, as we try to scale, we want to lay out this paid plans or upselling by adding further features that would benefit their businesses as they scale as well. So that's our current roadmap. Our business model is a transparent monthly SaaS model, and as Kevin mentioned, the churn rate. This is something that we're actually anticipating or expecting. We've reached out to some founders, advisors, and we've been cautioned that users are just going to be staying as they see value within your platform. So this is what we're trying to wrestle our minds with, trying to identify those micro pain points that would keep this churn rates low or keep them within the platform. So that's where our kind of like dilemma is right now. But we're trying to provide solutions like managing these pre-orders, because most or other platforms do not handle this, and then making it more easy to use as compared to other users or sellers that don't have enough time to figure out what to do, or within a technical or a complicated application. So those are our moves right now that we're trying to focus on. Also enabling long-term and sustainable seller growth. So as they scale, that's how the platform grows. So we want to stick with them for the long term. So these are competitive positioning. At the moment, we're trying to compare ourselves with the other platforms, and you can see here we're trying to be to provide support into the Filipino MSMEs to have that local fit, and trying to actually solve some of those, or align ourselves within the UN's sustainable developmental goals, which are no poverty, gender equality, and infrastructure and digitalization. So everybody can get equal opportunities as they run their business, or they operate their businesses. So next slide. So as I mentioned, I'm Miles Otario, and right now we're currently validating our product market fit. So this session really is pot of gold for me to attend to. So yeah, thank you for this session, Geeks on the Beach. And yeah, right now we're not raising any money, but we are preparing for a free seed round later this year. And I would really love to get some feedback on our approach, if it makes sense or if it resonates with you. We'd be grateful to keep you updated on as we cross key milestones. We're also open to early guidance or informal mentorship while we validate retention and conversion. So
Thank
that's
you,
it.
Richard.
Thank you.
Miles, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Just hang on
Thank you.
tight. Jesse,
Hello, let me just share my screen.
are you on video? I'm trying to find you. There you go. Replay spotlight. There you go.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening, we're going to do one more pitch and then we'll do the feedback, question and answer on the pitches after that. If you need to step off at the hour, we totally understand, but we are going to extend for another 15 minutes past the hour for those of you who can stay. Go ahead, Jesse.
Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, wonderful.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, I'm Jesse from Easy Tax. So this is actually a partnership between my firm, Lee Professional Services, and Sprint 19 Labs Inc. So we're a group of 3 people. I'm the business expert, and I have 2 partners, which are developers. I think one of them is here, Carl. Hello, Carl. So Easy Tax. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So in terms of tax filing and compliance in the Philippines, right? For micro enterprises and freelancers, they're having a hard time. Reality is they face 3 problems. First, it's time consuming. Now, imagine that you're a doctor that's not employed. You have your own business registration, you have your own clinic. Basically, you're like a business. You're not employed. You have your own business. Your time should be allocated in understanding what your patients need, studying more in terms of medicine, instead of using that precious time in understanding and complying with the tax authorities in the Philippines. Right? So it's time consuming instead of you focusing on what you do best. Second, it's complex. Aside from tax filing for businesses on a periodic setup, you have to understand that tax laws changes every time in the Philippines. So again, going back to our example, a doctor. How do you expect a doctor to understand that, right? How do you expect a doctor to know the changes in our tax laws from time to time? Lastly, it's tied up with complexity. It requires expertise. Now, if the same example, a doctor is a startup, a fresh graduate, sorry, not startup, a small business, a fresh graduate who just graduated, created his first clinic in Manila, how do you expect him to invest some of his money to hire an expert, right? An accountant to do his bidding. So it's a bit difficult, right? Just to say that your business is legal. Now, this is where we come in. This is where Easy Tax comes in. So our innovative solution offers simplified automated tax filing using our proprietary AI system, wherein all you have to do is scan your receipts, scan your invoices, the invoices that you receive every time you purchase something, the invoices you issue every time you sell something. You just need to scan it. And then our system will do the bookkeeping or the record keeping on your behalf, and will also do the filing on your behalf. Second, this is the paramount solution that we have. It has seamless integration with EBIR forms. Now, for freelancers in this call, for us to be able to file, we need to open our laptops, open EBIR forms, the tax authorities application, and file it and file. Note, it does not work on Mac. So you need to have your Windows laptop or desktop just to file your tax return. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass. So it has seamless integration with EBIR forms. So using your phone, after scanning, once there is a deadline, just click file. You have it. You're compliant. Lastly, it has transparent pricing. So we have our transparent pricing on whatever package that you would need, but we do have specific packages for specific kinds of users. So if you will forget all of the things that I say, especially for those who are freelancers or micro business owners here, in the future, you only need to scan your invoices, click file, and pay. That's it. You're compliant with the tax authorities in the Philippines. So understanding the market. So right here, I just put in a small, a very high level look on what the market looks like. So highlighted, the text in red pertains to serviceable obtainable market. So this is just in the national capital region, okay, of the Philippines. We have 170,000 micro, small, medium enterprises and self-employed individuals that ideally we can obtain. Note, these are just registered MSMEs and self-employed individuals. Imagine if complying with the tax authorities in the Philippines is very easy. There are a lot of people, freelancers, who are not even registered with the tax authorities. Imagine those number of people that we can tap on. So the 170,000, that's just the registered number of MSMEs and self-employed, but we don't know how many really there is, especially for those who are not registered. Actually, that's it. Thank you for listening. We are Easy Tax, and I hope we can get some inputs on the pitch on how we can improve it in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. That was good. Kevin, I'll give it up to you.
Sure. So I'll start with Seller PH if I can, and direct a couple of questions to Miles first off. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of feedback because you're early on in your journey. You're still looking to confirm your product market fit. So you're just kind of in those early stages in order to get all of that going. It looks like we're still seeing the
stop the screen share. Yeah. Jesse or
Hold on.
There
there
we
you
go.
go.
All right, we're back.
We're
Okay.
back.
I was seeing myself in a loop through the. All right. Okay, so I think you're on the right track in regards to the way that you're thinking about it. I think you're in a challenging market spot going after the small sellers. The challenge being that it's a fragmented market, so it makes the customer acquisition side of things hard. That's a tomorrow problem, not a today problem. The today problem is demonstrating the product market fit, which is where it sounds like you're focusing on. And so I think you're definitely on the right track in regards to the way that you're approaching it. I like how you said that you're already thinking about the micro problems that create the additional layer of stickiness to keep them on. Keeping in mind that a lot of the small sellers probably aren't generating massive income. So your monetization per customer is probably going to be relatively low. And so you got to keep that in mind in regards to making sure that you avoid feature sprawl. The challenge oftentimes when you start off with the frame of mind of trying to build in and solve a lot of the pain points is you can end up getting feature sprawl and it can take away from the usability. And so as you said at the beginning, you're trying to make it kind of foolproof, that anybody can kind of pick it up. It's localized. It makes it plain simple. The more feature sprawl that you can end up getting, you'll end up kind of running up against that sort of trade-off balance. But I think the key thing there is going to end up being trying to find the niche that it most resonates with, and being able to find what is the key pain points that they're having that they're most willing to pay for. Maybe you can't solve them all, but you can say you can get the most acute ones out of it. Once you have that, the challenge is figuring out the go-to-market strategy, because as I referenced, it's a fragmented. But as you'll hear a lot of the startup gurus say, you start deep and narrow, and then you do things that don't scale, is the other kind of cliche saying as well. But it's very true, because you get the focus, you get that emphasis, and it can kind of scale out from there. So not so much as question, but kind of commentary on the presentation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, we've somehow realized that we're in a fragmented kind of like market wherein we cannot really go after this already established businesses, and then we really need to make ourselves focused on these small businesses or really starting out. Those are the niche that we're trying to get involved with. So we're trying to partner or collaborate with this sort of businesses, like in a diverse approach as well, wherein we've signed with a clothing brand, a food and beverage partner as well. Those businesses, those are a cosmetic brand as well. So this is where we're starting to get ourselves familiar with and trying to identify those micro pain points, so that as you mentioned, they stick with us as well. So those are the learnings that we're trying to identify here. But thank you so much.
Yeah. No. I like the point about what you're making. Just to reiterate on it, regardless of whether or not it's the e-commerce enabler that you're doing or different sorts of spaces, there's inevitably the same challenge point with going after the micro and SMEs. Because the smaller the end customer, the more fragmentation has a tendency of being. But it's a big market. The challenge is figuring out how to successfully capture it, because it kind of comes back to that low monetization per customer and figuring out the most cost-effective manner. But first you need to prove that value, and then you can try and figure out that second layer of the problem. Okay, on the easy tax side of things, first question that I have is there a working prototype already? Is it up and running, or is it in development?
It's in development, Kevin.
Okay. And when you said snapping the invoices, this is to pay the tax on kind of the service tax, yeah?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Tax is a giant pain, regardless of what country, what type of tax. There's always a friction of pain point associated with it. And I've never filed taxes in Philippines because I don't have to personally. So I haven't personally felt the same pain point, but I've heard the pain point mentioned numerous times. And the Philippines isn't alone. Across Southeast Asia, across the globe, there's a lot of similarities in regards to it. So I like the aspect of automating away. I think that there's probably a couple layers in regards to the development of that likely are going to end up causing a bit of challenge, which is you're going to end up having to have API linkage to the government tax portal. So you're going to have government buy-in or permission in order to make the other layer work. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to create a relatively a more complex solution that essentially could end up being like an agent filling out the form themselves on the Windows-based platform. each and every single time, as opposed to kind of data feed. So it can end up causing challenge there. So I'm not sure whether or not you've already gone down that path. But if you haven't, I would warn that getting government permissions to touch any of their systems has a tendency of taking an inordinately long amount of time. And so if you haven't started that process, I would start doing it now, because generally speaking, at any time that you need to get governments on board, the question on timeline is just a giant question mark. And oftentimes, at least in my experience, not having dealt with the Philippine government too many times, is that governments across the globe have a tendency of saying one thing and then meaning 10 times as long. Not to scare you, but I'm just saying that if you since you're in the build phase right now, I would start pushing on that angle with some level of urgency, because that's the critical component that's going to make everything work. Because without that, you're basically going to end up creating the kind of the calculation without the submission. And I think the key aspect in regards to value prop that will make this product market fit is going to be on that submission layer, and that's going to require that additional interaction. There's workarounds that we now have technical tools that will enable us to do workarounds for if you can't get straight permission. And there's aspects of like do things that don't scale components that you can kind of, just kind of brute force it when you're in the early days. But I think, coming back to that point of get started on that as soon as possible.
Yep. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, actually, I've been working with, I'm a tax practitioner in the Philippines for 10 years. So yes, I'm very familiar with it. So just a background on what we're doing. Actually, we reverse engineer how the tax authorities application sends it to the tax portal. So we're currently doing that. So once we've completed it, we can mimic how the tax portal sends it to the server, and then can link it to our app. That's the basic plan, actually. And to your point, the second plan is really, if we can't do it, then we need an agent to manually put it in the windows, right? But we don't want that to happen. So we're actually pushing for the first option.
Yeah. I assume since you're a tax agent already, that you have the login credentials, etc., that enable you access. So like you could brute force it if it required. On the workaround of kind of hacking the way that the information sent, there's a chance they could shut you off, because they may end up seeing an unsecured connection sending them information that's not coming from their dedicated portal. And so it could end up, their own cybersecurity team, if presumably they have one, could end up kind of shutting that down at some point. So just caution point on that. Another question for you, because you're already doing taxes for clients, there's always the aspect of how this could end up cannibalizing away revenue that you could potentially already be getting from clients. So there's the question mark there, just to make sure that when you're looking at it, perhaps it's a matter of this is the lower value, more painful work that you're trying to automate away so that you can focus on high value work for the same clients. Maybe it's complementary, maybe it's otherwise, but there's a question point there in regards to how does this impact core business as a tax agent?
A very good question. Actually, the vision, Kevin, is really to remove the bookkeepers and the accountants, so that basically it will kill my business. That's the vision. So you don't need an accountant to do your filing, just need your application. Basically, killing, apologies for the accountants out there, but killing that business.
Well, I do think that there's probably going to be a handful of businesses that are going to see some automation kind of disrupting the way that they are, which inevitably anything that is based upon structured rule-based formats, which is things like accounting, If I could never deal with my auditor again, I would love that. I'd love it if it was just an AI that I put my statements into and it comes back and it tells me, and then I don't have to go through the whole justify this, justify that. We're doing spot testing for this. We're doing spot testing for that. Lawyers as well. I'd love to see. I'd love to not have to deal with them anymore. But tax is another one of those. I see the value proposition. I like how you're trying to think ahead on being able to move. I think that there will probably still end up having to be a service level element for the foreseeable future, just because when you start talking about things as serious as tax, people still want to make sure that there's a human in the loop. So even as you start developing this, I think that there's still going to end up being kind of a software plus service sort of angle. So consolation, making sure that you're signaling that somebody is still kind of sitting, making sure that everything is processing, because, if something goes wrong with your app, the penalties could end up becoming big. So you'll probably end up having to have some sort of liability insurance as a service provider as well, just to make sure that you have that protection. Stina, you got your hand up.
Yes, wonderful discussions. I'm always worried about time. You got 2 minutes till 15 minutes in the hour. Kevin, I'm not sure how much time you have. I want to be respectful of your time and everyone else's. I am willing to stay to talk to the other folks that are new to Geeks on a Beach and just answer general questions. We do have